Okay, so the first document I'd like you to consider is this map. Essentially, it's an illuminated manuscript from the 14th century. It's from medieval times. It was created by a Jewish cartographer named Abraham Kreskis. And there's an interesting language. It's Catalan, which is, a lot of people mistake it for Spanish dialect, but in fact it is its own language, kind of derived from Roman Latin. The interesting things about this particular map, and the things that will interest us in studying African American history, are the landmarks of sorts that will help us to distinguish where on the map things are. I zoomed in a little too much, too fast. But what you're looking at here is essentially Italy. So look at the boot of Italy right here. That would indicate to us that this, in fact, right here is the Mediterranean Sea. And under the Mediterranean Sea, this would then be Africa. To give you your bearing, this would be the Red Sea. Over here would be Europe, Asia over here, etc. Now, what's interesting about this is that it tells us a lot about what was important at the time. If you really go in depth into the map, it does show a lot of detail. It lets you know whether a certain place was Muslim or Christian or something other than those two, based on some flags and buildings and things like that. It gives descriptions of the people in certain places and what they might look like, things that they might do. And the larger kings, as you can see here, 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 and here, are of the utmost importance. So if we were to focus on Africa, we'd find that in Africa is one of the large figures. And in zooming in, we can see that this is Mansa Musa. Now, Mansa Musa, many believe, was the richest man to ever live. He made his wealth from the trans-Saharan trade, from the salt mines and the gold mines, and taxing people that would want to come through his empire. In looking at the wording next to Mansa Musa, we can see that in the Catalan language, he's referred to as something like Musa Mali. You can kind of see right here. There are some words you can pick up which are very similar to our English words. For example, this word Negros, and I believe the word noble right here as well. Now, what does this tell us? This tells us that when this map was made, there is indication that Africa was quite wealthy, and Mansa Musa was the reason for that wealth. I do have here a translation of this map, of this particular area of the map, and it says, "This black lord is called Musa Meli, and is the sovereign of the land of the Negroes of Geneva, which is modern-day Ghana. And this king is the richest and noblest of all these lands due to the abundance of gold that is extracted from his lands." Now, we could make the argument, if there was so much gold in Africa, where is that gold now, or what happened? Now, you've probably learned through world history that there is something called, it's colonization, really, when all the European countries came in to exploit Africa. As you can see here on this map from Wikipedia, most of Africa was, in fact, owned by a European empire. The only two that were not were Liberia, as you may have found out through the test the other day, was actually started by a group of American people, Liberia meaning liberty, and then Ethiopia. There's an amazing story of a king named Menelik II who had ammunition that he had gotten some French guns, and was able to defend himself from Italy and remain independent. Quite an amazing story. I did highlight right here a particular statistic, for lack of a better term, that I found quite striking, that in 1870, 10% of Africa was under formal European control. And just 44 years later, in 1914, it had increased to almost 90% of the continent being owned or colonized by Europe. And therefore, a lot of the riches that Africa might have had may have ended up somewhere else. So where is that wealth now? No, quite simply, if we're to trust Forbes, which I think we might, the United States, Germany, Italy, France, and Russia are the top 5 countries with the gold reserves. If we go to a second source, because of the importance of corroboration, here's another site which lists all those countries in the same order. So somewhere along the line, that gold has been taken out of Africa, has been dispersed amongst the world powers. And if we really look at all of the countries here, I think you can go deep down into the 20 or 30 and not find one particular country from Africa that is considered top in gold reserve. So, going back to Mansa Musa, the wealth that Africa once had, the other 2 documents I'd like you to look at will be document 2 and 3. These are actually accounts of scholars, Muslim scholars, who had visited Africa about 300 years apart, and they witnessed something very similar. And in those accounts and witnessing something very similar, it gives us the indication that, in fact, Mansa Musa and the wealth of Africa was a reality because of the corroboration of those 2 accounts. We could get deeper into Mansa Musa. I did attach another video that I'd like you to watch on your own time. John Green, who wrote The Fault in Our Stars, has an amazing YouTube series on history and literature and things like that, and I've included that for you as well. Please email me with any questions, and I'll get back to you in a couple days with more explanation of these particular documents. Thanks.